The year 1471 marked a climactic chapter in the brutal dynastic struggle known as the Wars of the Roses. King Edward I of the House of York had just achieved a major victory at the Battle of Barnet, where the powerful Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick, the Kingmaker, was slain. This victory, however, did not signal the end of the conflict. A formidable Lancastrian threat was gathering, one that carried the hopes of a dynasty on its shoulders. Queen Margaret of Anjou, the indomitable wife of the imprisoned King Henry VI, had finally landed on English shores at Weymouth in Dorset. She was not alone. With her was her 17-year-old son, Edward of Westminster, the Prince of Wales and the Lancastrian heir to the throne. Their arrival on the very day of the Battle of Barnet was a cruel twist of fate. News of Warwick's defeat was a devastating blow to their cause. The initial plan to join forces with the Kingmaker was now impossible. A new strategy was desperately needed. Lancastrian leadership, including the experienced Duke of Somerset, Edmund Beaufort, and the Earl of Devon, John Courtenay, resolved on a new course of action. They would march north and cross the River Severn into Wales. There they hoped to recruit fresh troops and join with the Welsh forces loyal to Jasper Tudor, Earl of Pembroke. This combined army would then be strong enough to confront the Yorkists. The march began, a desperate race against time. The Lancastrian army was a mix of loyal nobles, their retinues, and mercenaries from France. Their morale, initially high, was now fragile, shaken by the news from Barnet. They pushed northwards, their path a grueling trek through the English countryside. King Edward IV, a brilliant and energetic military commander, was not idle. Upon learning of Margaret's landing, he quickly gathered his victorious army at Windsor. He understood the Lancastrian strategy perfectly. He knew he had to prevent them from crossing the Severn at all costs. A pursuit was immediately launched. Edward's army was battle-hardened and confident. They were spurred on by the promise of ending the Lancastrian threat once and for all. The Yorkist intelligence network was effective, keeping the king informed of the enemy's movements. The Lancastrians attempted to deceive Edward by finding towards London. This ruse failed to fool the Yorkist king. He saw through the deception and continued his relentless pursuit. The Lancastrian army reached the city of Bristol, where they were able to gather much-needed supplies and artillery. From Bristol, they continued their march north, aiming for the city of Gloucester. Gloucester possessed the nearest bridge over the River Severn. Control of this bridge was vital to their plan. However, Edward IV had anticipated this move. He sent urgent messages to Sir Richard Beauchamp, the governor of Gloucester, ordering him to bar the city gates and defend the bridge. Beauchamp, a staunch Yorkist supporter, obeyed without hesitation. The Lancastrians arrived at Gloucester on the morning of May 3rd, only to find the gates shut and the walls defended. They were exhausted from their forced march. Their hopes of an easy crossing were dashed. A short, sharp skirmish took place outside the city walls. Lancastrian artillery proved ineffective against the city's defenses. Realizing that a prolonged siege was impossible with Edward's army so close behind, the Lancastrian commanders made a difficult decision. They had to continue their march north to the next crossing point over the Severn, a bridge at Upton-upon-Severn. This meant another grueling 10 miles of marching for their already weary soldiers. The Yorkist army, meanwhile, was closing in fast. Edward had pushed his men hard, covering over 30 miles in a single day. They arrived at Cheltenham, just a few miles east of the Lancastrians. The chase was nearing its end. The Lancastrian army finally reached the town of Tewkesbury late in the day. were utterly spent. The soldiers had marched and fought for days with little rest or food. They could go no further. The Duke of Somerset decided they had no choice but to make a stand and fight. He chose a strong defensive position just south of the town. The ground was well suited for defense, a patchwork of fields, hedges, and steep banks. Their right flank was protected by the River Avon and the Swillgate Brook. Their front was a slope, later known as the Gastons. The position seemed secure, a natural fortress. They deployed their army into 3 divisions, or battles. The Duke of Somerset commanded the right battle. The center was commanded by Lord Wenlock, a man whose loyalty had shifted before. The Earl of Devon commanded the left battle. Prince Edward of Westminster was stationed with the center division, a symbol of the cause they fought for. On the morning of Saturday, May 4th, 1471, the Yorkist army arrived on the field. King Edward V surveyed the Lancastrian position. He saw its strengths but also recognized a potential weakness. He deployed his own army, also in 3 battles. He gave command of the vanguard to his younger brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester. Edward himself commanded the main, central battle. Lord Hastings commanded the rear. The king also made a crucial tactical decision. He noticed a small, wooded park on the Lancastrian right. He ordered some 200 mounted spearmen to secretly occupy this wood. Their orders were to watch for an opportunity to attack the Lancastrian flank if they moved from their defensive line. The battle began not with a clash of steel, but with a thunderous roar. The Yorkist artillery opened fire, bombarding the Lancastrian lines. The cannonballs tore through the ranks of the tired soldiers. The Yorkist archers added to the barrage, sending clouds of arrows into the enemy position. Lancastrians were pinned down, suffering casualties without being able to strike back effectively. The Duke of Somerset, a man of fiery temperament, grew increasingly frustrated. He could not stand by and watch his men be cut down by the relentless bombardment. Against the advice of other commanders, he made a fateful decision. He would lead his division out from their strong position and attack the Yorkist left flank, commanded by the Duke of Gloucester. Somerset's charge was initially successful. His men surged forward with great courage, crashing into Gloucester's division. Fighting was fierce and desperate, a chaotic melee of swords, axes, and pole arms. Gloucester's men were hard-pressed, struggling to hold their ground against the furious onslaught. The Duke of Gloucester himself fought in the thick of the action, his banner a rallying point for his men. But Somerset's bold move had exposed his flank. This was the moment the hidden Yorkist spearmen had been waiting for. They burst from the woods, charging into the side and rear of Somerset's division. The surprise was total and devastating. The Lancastrian attackers, caught between Gloucester's men to their front and the spearmen to their flank, were thrown into confusion. Their momentum was broken. Panic began to spread through their ranks. The attack faltered, then collapsed entirely. Somerset's men broke and fled, trying to get back to their original lines. The retreat quickly turned into a rout. King Edward IV saw his opportunity. He ordered a general advance. The entire Yorkist line surged forward, pressing their advantage. They crashed into the wavering Lancastrian center, commanded by Lord Wenlock. What happened next is a matter of historical debate. According to one account, the furious Duke of Somerset, having managed to retreat, confronted Lord Wenlock. He accused Wenlock of treason and betrayal for failing to support his charge. In a fit of rage, Somerset is said to have struck Wenlock down with a battle-axe, killing him on the spot. The death of their commander, whether by enemy action or a comrade's hand, shattered the morale of the center division. They broke and fled without putting up much of a fight. Earl of Devon's division on the left, saying the collapse of the other two battles, also broke. The entire Lancastrian army was now in full flight. The battle had turned into a massacre. The Yorkist soldiers pursued the fleeing enemy with a vengeance. Fleeing soldiers were trapped against the confluence of the River Avon and the Swillgate Brook. Many drowned trying to escape across the water. A group of Lancastrians, including the Duke of Somerset, sought refuge in the great Norman Abbey of Tewkesbury. They claimed the ancient right of sanctuary within the holy building. King Edward IV, his armor stained with the blood of battle, pursued them to the very doors of the abbey. The scene was one of chaos and terror, with victorious soldiers eager to continue the slaughter inside the sacred space. The priests of the abbey, holding a crucifix aloft, confronted the king and begged him to spare those who had sought sanctuary. But, perhaps in a moment of piety or calculation, agreed to grant a pardon. He ordered that no one within the abbey should be harmed. However, this clemency was short-lived. 2 days later, the Yorkists' desire for vengeance overcame any respect for sanctuary. The Duke of Somerset and about a dozen other prominent Lancastrian leaders were forcibly dragged from the abbey. They were subjected to a swift and summary trial for treason. The verdict was a foregone conclusion. All were condemned to death. But the most significant death at Tewkesbury was that of Prince Edward of Westminster. The circumstances of his death are shrouded in uncertainty. Some accounts claim he was killed in the heat of the battle, fighting bravely to the last. Other, more sinister, accounts suggest he was captured and brought before King Edward IV after the fighting had ceased. In this version, the captured prince behaved defiantly. Whatever the truth, the death of the 17-year-old prince was a mortal blow to the House of Lancaster. With him died the direct line of succession and their greatest hope for the future. Queen Margaret of Anjou was captured a few days after the battle, her spirit finally broken by the death of her only son. The Battle of Tewkesbury was an overwhelming and decisive victory for the House of York. It utterly destroyed the Lancastrian field army. It eliminated the Lancastrian heir to the throne. It led to the capture of the Lancastrian queen. With the deaths of Henry VI and his son, the main line of the House of Lancaster was extinguished. The Yorkist triumph was complete. King Edward IV would rule England for another 12 years, his throne secured by the bloody victory at Tewkesbury. The battle was a brutal and bloody affair, a stark example of the savagery of the Wars of the Roses. It was a day of desperate gambles, tactical genius, and ruthless vengeance. The fields around Tewkesbury, once green and peaceful, had been soaked in the blood of thousands. The memory of the bloody meadow would serve as a grim reminder of the cost of civil war. The victory cemented the reputation of Edward IV as a formidable warrior king. It also marked a significant moment in the rise of his younger brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who had played a key role in the battle's success. The echoes of Tewkesbury would resonate through the remaining years of the 15th century. The peace it brought was not to last forever, but on that day, in May 1471, the White Rose of York reigned supreme, its victory absolute and terrible. The sun set on a field of carnage. The future of England now belonged to the House of York. The battle had been a final, desperate throw of the dice for the Lancastrians. Yorkist victory was total. The war, for now, was over. The silence that fell over the battlefield was broken only by the cries of the wounded and the scavenging crows. The Abbey of Tewkesbury stood as a silent witness to the day's brutal events. The banners of Lancaster lay trampled in the dirt. The dream of a Lancastrian restoration had died. The Yorkist sun shone brightly over a kingdom won by the sword. The battle was a turning point in English history. It was the end of an era. The medieval world was giving way to a new age. The power of the old nobility had been broken on the battlefield. A new dynasty had been forged in the crucible of war. The consequences of this day would shape the destiny of England for generations to come. Names of the fallen would be remembered in ballads and chronicles. The story of Tewkesbury would become a legend. The ghosts of the slain would haunt the fields for centuries. The battle was a testament to the enduring human capacity for both courage and cruelty. It was a day that changed England forever.